They said it couldn't be done. Build a modern passenger jet without American engines, without European avionics, without Japanese carbon fiber, in complete isolation from the supply chain that built every successful airliner for the past 50 years. It would be like performing surgery with your hands tied behind your back, but on a frozen morning in Irkutsk, a jet with a wider cabin than an A320 and wings designed to outperform the 737 rolled onto the runway. Every single part, from the engine blades to the cockpit displays, built under the most comprehensive sanctions ever imposed on an aviation industry. This is the MC-21. And its story is about to rewrite the rules of what's possible when the world says no. Because what happened next wasn't just about building a plane. It was about reinventing an entire industry from the ground up, under pressure, under scrutiny, and against a ticking clock that threatened to ground Russia's aviation future forever. The story begins in 2007 in the glass towers of Moscow, where bureaucrats and aviation executives gather around conference tables, staring at uncomfortable truth. Russia's skies are dominated by foreign metal. Boeing 737's shuttle passengers between Moscow and St. Petersburg. Airbus A320s connect Sochi to Vladivostok, and scattered across regional airports, aging Soviet relics, Tupolev Tu-154s and Yakovlev Yak-42s, gasp through their final flights, burning fuel like it's going out of style, and terrifying passengers with every rattle and groan. The government sees a problem that goes beyond pride, dependence, total, complete dependence on a system they don't control. If the world turns hostile, if the supply chain breaks, if the relationships sour, the country is grounded, literally, so they commission a plane. Not a Soviet revival project with outdated technology and nationalist propaganda. Not a knockoff that slaps Russian paint on Chinese designs. A genuine competitor to the West's best-selling jets. Something that could go toe-to-toe with the aircraft that dominate 90% of the world's medium-haul flights. The design team at Irkut Corporation, a subsidiary of the United Aircraft Corporation, goes bold. They study everything. The A320neo's fuel efficiency, the 737 MAX's range, the Bombardier C-Series passenger comfort. Every narrow-body success story of the past 30 years gets dissected, analyzed, reverse-engineered not in form, but in philosophy. Then they make their calculated bets. First bet, build a cabin 4 inches wider than the competition. In an industry where passengers are squeezed into ever-shrinking spaces, where the economy experience feels more like human Tetris than transportation, width is luxury. Give passengers more space. Make the overhead bins bigger. Win on comfort where American and European manufacturers are racing to the bottom. Second bet, composite wings, not aluminum. Carbon fiber reinforced polymer, lighter, stronger, more fuel efficient than traditional materials. Wings that flex and bend in ways metal never could, reducing stress, improving aerodynamics, cutting fuel burn by up to 15%. Third bet, go global with the supply chain. Partner with Pratt & Whitney for engines. Their geared turbofan technology is the best in the business. Source avionics from Rockwell Collins, the gold standard in cockpit systems. Import carbon fiber from Toray in Japan, who've spent decades perfecting the material. The MC-21 isn't built in isolation. It's built by the world. By 2016, the first prototype makes its maiden flight. It's stunning. Sleek lines, modern cockpit, winglets that curve upward like a raptor in flight. The Russian aviation industry hasn't produced anything like this in generations, maybe ever. Test pilots rave about the handling. Engineers celebrate the performance data. Airlines start making inquiries. And then everything falls apart Crimea. The first wave of sanctions hits like a warning shot across the bow. But aviation parts? Still flowing. The West believes in commerce, in global supply chains, in the idea that everyone benefits when planes keep flying. Business is business, politics is politics, and the two remain carefully separated. The Skripal poisoning in Salisbury. Sanctions tighten. Some components get harder to find. Paperwork becomes more complicated, but workarounds exist. Shell companies, third-party brokers, creative accounting. The MC-21 program continues, delayed but not derailed. February, the line is crossed. And this time, the sanctions aren't surgical, they're total. The United States imposes export controls on virtually all aviation technology. The European Union follows suit. Japan cuts off material supplies. Overnight, the carefully constructed global supply chain that the MC-21 depends on simply ceases to exist. Pratt & Whitney engines? Gone. Not delayed. Not restricted. Completely unavailable. The contract is terminated, and the engines already on order are seized. Rockwell Collins avionics? Gone. Every cockpit display, every flight management system, every piece of navigation equipment, erased from the possibility space. Japanese carbon fiber for those beautiful composite wings, completely cut off. Toray, under pressure from Tokyo and Washington, cancels the contract. No appeals, no negotiations. Done. The MC-21, on the verge of certification, poised to enter commercial service, is suddenly an orphan. A plane built from parts that no longer exist, designed around systems that are now impossible to acquire. Industry analysts write obituaries. Aviation Week publishes articles with headlines like Russia's MC-21 dream, grounded by sanctions. Western executives, speaking anonymously to journalists, call it the end of Russia's commercial aviation ambitions. Because you can't just replace jet engines. You can't manufacture advanced carbon fiber overnight. The global aerospace supply chain took 70 years to build. Thousands of specialized companies, millions of man-hours of engineering, billions in research and development. You don't replicate that in a decade, certainly not under economic siege. Boeing's 787 Dreamliner has parts from over 50 countries. Airbus sources components from hundreds of suppliers across Europe, America, and Asia. Modern aviation is the ultimate expression of global cooperation, or it was. But Russia doesn't cancel the program. The engineers don't pack up their blueprints and go home. The government doesn't admit defeat. They do something more ambitious, more audacious, and possibly more insane. They decide to rebuild it from scratch. Every sanctioned part, every Western system, every component that made the MC-21 competitive. They'll make it themselves or find a way around it. It sounds impossible, and maybe it is, but they're going to try anyway. First challenge, the heart, the engines. An aircraft engine isn't just complex, it's one of the most sophisticated machines humanity has ever built. Turbine blades spinning at tens of thousands of RPM, withstanding temperatures that would melt most metals, engineered to tolerances measured in microns. A single modern jet engine represents billions in research and development. The original plan relied on Pratt & Whitney's Pia Vinotrina 100G, a geared turbofan that represents the cutting edge of propulsion technology, efficient, proven, reliable, now unavailable. Enter the PD-14, Russia's first domestically designed high-bypass turbofan since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Developed by United Engine Corporation in Perm, it's not a copy of the Pratt & Whitney. It's an entirely different approach. 20 years in development. Tested to destruction. Rebuilt. Tested again. The engineering challenges are staggering, creating single crystal turbine blades that can withstand extreme heat, developing a full-authority digital engine control system, building a gearbox that can handle massive torque loads. Every component needs to match Western standards or exceed them. December 2020. After years of delays, setbacks, and failures, the PD-14 completes Russian certification. It burns slightly more fuel than the Pratt & Whitney, about 8% more by some estimates, but it works, it's reliable, and crucially, it's theirs. No one can take it away. Next challenge, the wings. Carbon fiber composite wings were the MC-21's signature feature, the largest composite wing structures ever designed for a narrow-body aircraft. Lighter than aluminum by almost 15%. Stronger, more flexible, more efficient. But Toray is gone, and Russia's domestic carbon fiber industry is decades behind. The gap isn't small, it's a chasm of technology and expertise. The engineers at ONPP Technologia in Obninsk work around the clock. They study Western patents, though careful not to violate intellectual property laws. They experiment with different resin systems, different fiber orientations, different curing processes. The material they produce isn't quite as advanced as Toray's. It's slightly heavier, slightly less consistent. But by 2021, they're manufacturing their own pre-preg carbon fiber at scale. Meanwhile, a parallel track emerges. Some versions of the MC-21 switch to aluminum-lithium alloy wings as a backup plan. Heavier than composites, adding about 2 tons to the aircraft's empty weight, but proven technology. A compromise, but one that works. Then there's avionics, the brain of the aircraft. Modern cockpit systems are marvels of integration. Flight management computers that calculate optimal routes in real time. Heads-up displays that project critical information onto the windscreen. Fly-by-wire systems that translate pilot inputs into precise control surface movements. All previously sourced from Western suppliers. Russian companies like UAC and Technodynamica scramble to fill the gaps. Some systems are reverse-engineered from existing equipment, walking a fine legal line. Others are built from open architectures and modified for aviation use. Import restrictions are carefully navigated. Some components come from China, though Moscow won't publicly admit how many. Every system needs to be tested, validated, certified. The landing gear, the hydraulics, the environmental control systems. The auxiliary power unit, the seats, the galleys, the lavatories. Every single component that once came from the global supply chain needs a domestic replacement. Every substitution costs time. Every redesign requires recertification. The delivery timeline, once optimistically set for 2017, then pushed to 2020, then 2023, becomes a moving target that seems to recede with each passing year. Engineers work 18-hour days, budgets explode, political pressure mounts, but piece by piece, component by component, system by system, the plane comes together. A plane that shouldn't exist, built by an industry that was supposed to collapse. June 2023, Irkutsk Aviation Plant. Dawn breaks over the runway, and a white aircraft with blue striping, sights ready for flight. The first fully domestic MC-21 takes flight. PD-14 engines, roaring with 14,000 kilograms of thrust each. Russian avionics displaying flight data in Cyrillic characters. Composite wings, made from Russian carbon fiber, flexing under load exactly as the computer models predicted. The test pilot, a veteran with thousands of hours in both Soviet and Western aircraft, radios back to the tower. Aircraft performs nominally, all systems green. It's a symbolic moment, more than symbolic, it's a statement. The plane that Western sanctions were supposed to kill is in the air, climbing through 10,000 feet, proving that the impossible was merely improbable. But symbolism doesn't sell tickets. and statements don't fill seats. The real questions linger in the hangars and boardrooms. Is it safe? Is it reliable? Will airlines actually buy it? Can Russia produce enough of them to matter? Certification is the first hurdle. Russia's own aviation authority, Rosaviatsia, needs to approve every system, every material, every procedure. It's a rigorous process, and with so many new domestic components, it takes time. Lots of time. Then there's international certification, EASA in Europe, FAA in the United States, which, given the current political climate, seems virtually impossible. The MC-21 will likely never receive Western certification, which means it will never fly routes into Europe or North America. That cuts off the most lucrative aviation markets on the planet. That leaves the domestic market and a handful of allies. Aeroflot has orders, 122 aircraft, though the delivery schedule keeps sliding. S7 Airlines has expressed interest. A few smaller Russian carriers are in negotiations. Beyond Russia's borders, there's cautious interest from countries already operating outside the Western aviation ecosystem. China is watching closely, though they're developing their own competitor, the Comac C919. Iran has inquired about purchases. Their aging fleet desperately needs replacement, and Western manufacturers won't sell to them. Venezuela, Cuba, Belarus. Countries that have either embraced or been forced into alternative economic arrangements. But here's the brutal math that keeps airline executives up at night. Airbus and Boeing have order backlogs in the thousands. Airlines globally trust their maintenance networks that span every continent. They trust parts availability. You can get a replacement component delivered to almost any major airport within hours. They trust resale value. A 10-year-old 737 or A320 can be sold to dozens of operators worldwide. The MC-21 has none of that. No global maintenance network. No deep inventory of spare parts. No secondary market. An airline buying an MC-21 is making a bet not just on the aircraft, but on Russia's ability to support it for the next 25 years. And production capacity. Irkut aims for 40 aircraft per year. By 2030, it's an ambitious target. For context, Boeing, even with all its recent troubles, builds 40 737s per month. Airbus produces more than 50 A320 family aircraft monthly. The scale isn't there. The infrastructure isn't there. Not yet. Maybe not ever. There's another challenge that doesn't appear in the press releases: brain drain. Russia's aviation sector has hemorrhaged talent. Engineers who can work anywhere in the world, who speak the universal language of aerodynamics and systems integration, have options. Some stay out of patriotism. Others stay because the work is fascinating, building something from nothing. But many leave, taking their expertise to Airbus in Toulouse, Boeing in Seattle, or the growing aerospace industries in Asia. So what is the MC-21, really? Is it a technological triumph? A modern airliner built entirely without Western support? Proof that Russia can compete in the most demanding engineering challenge in commercial industry? Or is it a desperate gamble? A plane that will forever exist on the margins of global aviation, too isolated to compete, too expensive to mass produce, too unsupported to become anything more than a symbol? Maybe it's both. Maybe it's neither. Maybe it's something we don't have a category for yet. The MC-21 proves that with enough political will, enough money, enough time, and enough talented engineers willing to solve seemingly impossible problems, you can build a competitive aircraft in isolation. But it also proves how brutally difficult that is, how many compromises are required, how much it costs. Every substitution came at a price. The PD-14 engines are heavier and less efficient than the Pratt & Whitney units they replaced. the domestic carbon fiber isn't quite as advanced as tow rays. The avionics took years longer to develop than planned. Every delay pushed potential customers toward proven alternatives, toward aircraft that already exist, that already fly, that already have established support networks. Yet the plane exists. It flies. Test pilots say it handles beautifully. Engineers are proud of what they've built against impossible odds. And in a world increasingly fractured by geopolitics, where supply chains are weapons and technology is leverage, where nations are learning that dependence equals vulnerability, that might be enough. Because the MC-21 isn't just about Russia's skies anymore. It isn't just about replacing Boeing and Airbus in domestic routes. It's a preview, a test case, a proof of concept for what happens when the global system breaks down, when nations decide that self-reliance, no matter how expensive, no matter how difficult, is worth the price. China is watching. India is watching. Brazil is watching. Every country that has ever felt vulnerable to supply chain disruption, every nation that is worried about sanctions or embargoes, or the weaponization of trade, is watching what Russia has done with the MC-21. The question isn't whether the MC-21 will dominate the market. It almost certainly won't. The economics don't work, the geopolitics don't work, the scale isn't there. The question is, how many other countries are taking notes? How many other nations are looking at their dependencies in aviation, in semiconductors, in energy, in rare earth minerals, and deciding that the risk is too great? The MC-21 might never fly over New York or London or Tokyo. It might never carry more than a few thousand passengers outside the former Soviet Union. But it has already changed the conversation about what's possible, about what happens when you tell an industry it can't have something it needs. Sometimes they find a way anyway, and that might be the most important thing the MC-21 ever accomplishes, proving that in the 21st century, isolation doesn't mean surrender. It means innovation born from necessity. It means building new systems when the old ones are taken away. The MC-21 is flying. Against all odds, against all predictions, against what every expert said was possible. And somewhere, in a design bureau in Beijing or Bangalore or Sao Paulo, engineers are looking at those flights and asking themselves, if Russia could do it, why can't we?